Good Tuesday morning. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop, and expect a little bit of a shorter show today. When they're in session at the State House, I got to get things in here tight so we can get over there and cover what's going on. And things starting early this morning with 2 Illinois Supreme Court cases out of 3 that deal with the Pretrial Fairness Act. So we'll kind of do a little bit of a preview of what to expect there. So stay tuned for that. But also we got to look at what the State House has on tap for today. Legislators come in later on this afternoon, and they've got committee hearings scheduled, a series of subject matter hearings. So we'll explain what that is and obviously how you can monitor for yourself some of the things that are going on. But also don't forget to get to thecentersquare.com, sign up for that newsletter where you can just go to the Illinois page, click on newsletter, fill in your email, and you'll get in your inbox each and every weekday morning the latest headlines from the Center Square. Obviously, you're here with us live and you're watching, but feel free to share it up with people you think would be interested in finding out what's going on in Illinois. Of course, this is Illinois in Focus, and sometimes we'll watch what happens over in Washington, D.C., getting one of the Washington, D.C. reporters for the Center Square to join us more on a regular basis, so we'll really get plugged into what's going on with those in Washington, D.C. who have the credentials to go into the White House and to really be on the ground there and share with us what's going on. Because all of the, those tax dollars impact you right here in Illinois as well. You're paying taxes to the federal government, not just to Illinois and your local governments. So it's important to know what's going on. So expect to see a lot more of that. But obviously here we focus on what's up in Illinois, and it's Illinois in Focus. If you don't watch live, you're missing out on the chat room. But you're also able to get the podcast anywhere you get podcasts, plus the segments of the show that post shortly after the live program each and every weekday morning here at 8 o'clock. So again, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and wake up with us each and every weekday morning. Stay tuned. We've got some stuff to tackle, including what's coming up today, a little bit of a preview of what to expect from the State House. So we'll delve into that and talk a little bit more about the process of bills being heard and things moving through the General Assembly. All right, so it's coming up here, Illinois in Focus Daily. Legislators heading back to Springfield today, meaning they're going through the process of spring session. It ends May 31st. Here we are. It's only March 11th, but obviously the budget's going to be a big deal with revenue projections kind of mixed depending on what agency you look at. But before we get to the budget, it seems to be an annual tradition every year of a ton of committee hearings, filing all kinds of legislation, and a lot of the political conversation focusing around various different types of issues outside of how your tax dollars are going to be spent. So Illinois in Focus Daily, here with you each and every weekday morning. Catch the live show by liking and subscribing and joining us at 8 o'clock each and every weekday morning with the Center Square here on YouTube, or you can get the podcast where you get podcasts, but also check out the segments at the YouTube channel and get the newsletter at thecentersquare.com. So Governor J.B. Pritzker, he is actually not in Illinois. He's going to be at the South by Southwest Festival. He's got an 11:30 event joining Rivian and South Carolina's governor for a conversation of how EVs secure U.S. leadership and strengthen communities. So that's going to be happening. But then later on in the day, the governor is going to be joining the IBM chairman and a CEO to discuss sci-fi to science. And it's the new era of AI and quantum computing. Again, that's another panel discussion that the governor's got scheduled today in South by Southwest. So don't expect, the governor to be making, some news during off-topic questions, because really those are going to be the two focuses that the governor is going to be speaking about outside of Illinois today. Meanwhile, legislators heading back to Springfield. They're both chambers coming in at noon. And, we might not have much action at all. Maybe some second readings of bills as we get close to the deadline for the Senate to pass Senate bills out of the Senate and the House to pass House bills out of the House, but they've got committee deadlines before that as well. So there's going to be a flurry of activity in the weeks ahead. But as legislators are driving down to Springfield, some senators staying back in Chicago, at least for a 9 o'clock transportation committee hearing. And what they're going to be talking about is the idea of consolidating some of the state's mass transit districts. All right. And this is as you've got the possibility of a huge fiscal cliff for these transit agencies. $730 million is what's anticipated. So they have a measure that they're going to be talking about called the Metropolitan Mobility Act. Not long ago, you had agencies pushing back on that, but a poll showing that there's some favor in the public of putting this all together in one agency. If you go to thecentersquare.com, you can find this story from way back in October where this was talked about. And here's just some of that.
Metra and Pace all have separate apps that don't work well together or don't work together at all, forcing people to juggle multiple apps, multiple schedules, and separate fares that just don't work as well as they should.
We all want to do the best job we can. I do not believe that combining us into one organization will make us better.
So, obviously, we'll be watching that committee hearing to see what happens. Again, that's at 9 o'clock up in Chicago, but legislators heading back down for a whole host of things, including in the House. You've got an appropriations committee for elementary and secondary education. We've been hearing a lot out of this committee as part of the budget process. About a quarter of every tax dollar the state collects from you is going to go to education, K through 12 education. And then when you wrap in the federal dollars, it's billions and billions and billions of dollars going to education. But they're going to be talking about a variety of things like special education. The National Board Certified Teachers are going to be speaking. Also, the Southwest Organizing Project, all looking for tax dollars to fund operations. Then a little bit later on in the afternoon, you've got an Adoption and Child Welfare Committee that's going to be talking about the Family First model. So, we'll get an overview of that with a subject matter hearing. The Agricultural Committee is going to be looking at the impacts of the United States Department of Agriculture funding freeze, as the subject matter notes, and tariffs and the delayed farm bill and how it impacts Illinois agriculture. So farmers may want to be paying close attention to that. It's at 2 o'clock. Then later on in the afternoon, you've got another Energy Policy 101 subject matter hearing with the Energy and Environment Committee. So that's some stuff that's going on today at the State House. Obviously, we'll also have some news conferences. I think Republicans are going to be discussing some of the priorities they see are misguided from Democrats in the supermajority. So minority party Republicans doing what they can to get some of their points out, but obviously they're in the minority party. So how effective are they really going to be? So that's just, again, a preview of what's coming up today. Governor's out of state. We've got a whole slew of committee hearings today touching on different subject matters. Are bills going to advance? Sure. As I had mentioned before in previous segments, and hopefully this is a way to educate viewers and listeners and readers on how the process works in Springfield. you've got bills that are filed, right? This is a new General Assembly. They started in January. They file thousands of bills. Those bills then go into certain committees, and certain committees are actually substantive committees that move them. But there's one committee, at least in the House, called the House Rules Committee. And it's always been kind of generally known that if a bill is in the House Rules Committee for any length period of time, it's likely not going anywhere, right? So if it's stuck in the Rules Committee, the colloquial term is, the phrase is, that's where bills go to die. So you got to be cognizant of that, right? And when we talk about bills that are controversial, I do want to point out to one that a lot of people have raised with me, and I think we talked about this briefly earlier this week, but this is House Bill 3458, and what it does is it says it amends the criminal code and provides that if a defense to aggravated battery when individual battered is a peace officer and the officer responded to an incident in which the officer interacted with a person whom a reasonable officer could believe was having a mental health episode, and the person with whom the officer interacted has a documented mental illness and acted abruptly. So again, seeming to have this aggravated battery defense for people who are having a mental health episode. But as you see, obviously a lot of people have shared this with me. Law enforcement reached out and shared this with me, showing their opposition to it, and others. But you can see here it's stuck in the Rules Committee. So it's been there since, almost a month ago. Not sure this is going to advance. Doesn't mean it can't advance. I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen here in the weeks ahead, but just, to understand that that's a measure that has yet to advance. Another one that was raised to my attention here is House Bill 2764. This one a little bit more lengthy when it comes to the synopsis, provides that notwithstanding anything in the contrary in specific provisions of law, a person serving a term of imprisonment, including terms of natural life in a Department of Corrections institution or facility, eligible for earned reentry, provides for the first year following the effective date of the Amendatory Act, a person is eligible for earned reentry if he or she has served a term of imprisonment of at least 35 consecutive years, provides that the second year following the effective date of the Amendatory Act, a person is eligible for earned reentry if he or she has served a term of imprisonment of at least 25 consecutive years. So it looks like it allows for people who may have long sentences to maybe have a pathway towards earned reentry. In this bill, as people are pointing out, in the law enforcement community, not happy about this. This could advance. It's in the Judiciary Criminal Committee. So again, not the House Rules Committee. It's in an actual substantive committee, the Judiciary Criminal Committee. Now, a lot of the public feels they can't interact with what's going on at the State House, but you can. And in no way is this a way to have people, go as pros or cons for things. But if you go to my.ilga.gov, you will be able to see the upcoming committee hearings. You can find the bills that are there, and you can even go in and file witness slips, and you just click through, you find witness slips, and you can actually provide witness slips on all kinds of legislation. So that's just a way that the public can interact, at least from a distance, when it comes to certain bills that are being brought up. So that's just some of the legislation that could be discussed, that likely won't be discussed, or some of the topics that are going to be brought up during the session today in Springfield. And of course, as the Illinois Associate Editor, we'll be there on the ground to cover all of that and more. It is Illinois in Focus. That's what we do. We focus in on Illinois here each and every weekday morning. I'm Greg Bishop. Thank you so much for being part of the program. Wake up with us and hop into the chat room live. You can also get the podcast where you get podcasts, and don't forget that newsletter at thecentersquare.com. end of cash bail in Illinois still having some waves reverberate in the criminal justice space, and the Illinois Supreme Court set to hear 2 of 3 cases today dealing with the Pretrial Fairness Act. Good morning, I'm Greg Bishop. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. Appreciate everybody tuning in, especially with the live show here each and every weekday morning at 8 o'clock. And as an associate editor for Illinois for the Center Square, we're on the ground in Springfield covering what happens. And one thing, obviously, that we keep a close eye on is, the legislative branch of government and then the executive branch of government, but we also take a look at the judicial branch of state government. And if you go to the Illinois Supreme Court website, you'll be able to see the docket today. And today's docket has 3 cases, and one of them doesn't deal with the Pretrial Fairness Act, but 2 of them do. And let's just take a look at the appellant's brief for case number 130866. This is the people, state of Illinois, appellee versus Antonio Cousins Jr. All right, this comes out of the 4th District of Illinois. And some of these, I think it's, at least gives you an understanding of how you can quickly review these types of legal, filings. But if you go through and you click on the brief, it gives you an overview, an index of sorts, and then it gives you the nature of the case here. So we'll likely be reviewing this tomorrow morning with Illinois in Focus here with the Center Square, and a story to be published promptly. Shortly thereafter, the Illinois Supreme Court meets at 9 o'clock and hears these cases. But let's just look at what the nature of the case is. Antonio Cousins Jr., defendant appellant, appeals from the written order entered following a hearing held pursuant to the Pretrial Fairness Act. All right, so the appellate court reversed the trial court's decision and remanded for further proceedings. What's the nature of the case? Issues being presented. The Pretrial Fairness Act requires the state to prove 3 elements to detain a defendant awaiting trial, right? Because just a bit more background here. Illinois is the first state to end cash bail statewide, meaning that if you get arrested for a low-level offense, you are going to be released from jail pending trial. You're innocent until proven guilty. Proponents of the Pretrial Fairness Act say that that's crucial, and it also makes sure that people of lesser means who don't have money to bail themselves out for low-level crimes, they could end up losing their job if they have to stay in jail until they have a trial. So clearly, there's an argument on that side, but on the other side, you've got some in the law enforcement community who think that this is only going to allow for more recidivism. It's going to allow for a lot of no-shows to courts, and there's been a lot of data and presentation with arguments on both sides using data, to make their points. But the Pretrial Fairness Act been around, obviously, with 2021 when it was passed as part of the Safety Act, and the Safety Act including the Pretrial Fairness Act, but it had an on-ramp, and then during that on-ramp to it being installed and implemented, no cash bail statewide, you had state's attorneys from across the state sue. It got mired in courts, and then it made all the way up to the Illinois Supreme Court, who delayed implementation of the Pretrial Fairness Act for them to deal with the issue. They heard the case. They then ruled that the Safety Act and the Pretrial Fairness Act is going to be allowed, and they started the implementation of it. So it's been in place, since was it 2023 September? Regardless, you've got no cash bail statewide. So in that issue of no cash bail, prosecutors, they have 48 hours to tell a judge this person's matches certain criteria. And then the judge makes a determination as to if that person can be released pending trial, or if they need to be held until trial. Now, the no cash bail provision, proponents say there's lower level crimes that are in the category of crimes where it's non-detainable. But the opponents of that say the threshold is too high, and there's certain crimes in that category that are problematic, and if we let people out, then it could be a danger to the community. So that's kind of where we're coming from here, is the interpretation of how this is being implemented. So back to this case, the first one that the Illinois Supreme Court's going to be hearing today, they're going to be looking at the Pretrial Fairness Act, where the defendant in this case says it requires the state to prove 3 elements to detain a defendant awaiting trial: a great presumption of guilt, a safety threat or flight risk, and that no conditions of release could mitigate that threat. When a court of review finds the state failed to meet its burden of proof as to one of these elements, must it remand for a hearing on conditions of release. So they're going to get into the minutia. We'll do what we can to distill that case down for you so you can understand that one. But that's not just the only case. They've got a second case they're going to be hearing dealing with the Pretrial Fairness Act. So we'll open this one up. And this is the people of the state of Illinois versus Tyrell Cooper. Again, overview of the case. Different case law. It's going to be presented. When you get to the nature of the case, it says defendant was charged with aggravated battery with a firearm, aggravated discharge of a firearm, and unlawful possession of a weapon by a felon. At his first appearance on Saturday morning, the people filed a petition to deny pretrial release and were granted a continuance. The circuit court held the detention hearing on Monday afternoon and granted the petition. The appellate court reversed, holding that the circuit court failed to hold the hearing within 48 hours and defendant's first appearance, and remanded for the circuit court to order defendant's release. The people appeal from this judgment. No questions raised in the charging instructions. So the issues presented that we're going to hear about, whether the circuit court correctly concluded that it held the detention hearing within 48 hours of defendant's first appearance, whether even if the detention hearing was late, defendant's not entitled to release because the statutory timing requirement is directory rather than mandatory, and whether defendant forfeited his challenge to the timeliness of the hearing by failing to object. So again, some of the minutiae here, but that's important when it comes to this end of cash bail being presented. So we'll hear those arguments. We'll preview, again, what we did here, the preview, and then we'll review what happened tomorrow morning to better understand how the courts are going to handle these things. So a little bit of a preview here with the Illinois Supreme Court tackling these cases around the Pretrial Fairness Act. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and be part of the program. Inside the chat room, there's a lively conversation, and you can also get the headlines in your inbox. Go to thecentersquare.com and register today. It's free. History in Illinois, no question about it, and a ton of history buffs in Illinois, especially when it comes around the rise of Abraham Lincoln in politics and the 16th president saying farewell to Springfield and hightailing it over to Washington, D.C. to then be president during Civil War, and all that fallout thereafter, and the assassination of Lincoln, and so on. But Springfield has a good chunk of history, and it's not just downtown. You've got surrounding areas, including outside Petersburg, Illinois, which is just northwest of Springfield, and it has Lincoln's New Salem. It's a pretty historic place where Lincoln, he failed at having a general store, but still very vibrant community back then, and a recreation of sorts with at least one original building, but tons of others that have been recreated over the decades, even back to the 1940s or so. It's still there, but it's falling apart, and some legislators looking for more state tax dollars to bring about some rehabilitation for that historic Lincoln's New Salem outside Petersburg. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Of course, the budget for the state of Illinois for the coming fiscal year starts July 1st. We'll be watching how they put that budget together. Tons of priorities. They got to pay for schools. They got to pay for pensions. They got to pay for general services. They got to pay for the governor's priorities of Smart Start and early childhood education. They got to pay for, the potential of developing, affordable housing. They've got to pay for a whole host of things. Did I mention pensions? So obviously, the budget's been proposed. It's the largest state budget in state history. It's going to be just under $55 billion of your tax dollars going to pay for these things. But there's tons of priorities. and also capital spending, meaning construction and money to go towards deferred maintenance or towards new projects. And there's going to be a lot of legislators from across the state looking to get $100,000 here for a community project or several million there for a infrastructure project. And those are these projects all across the state that legislators are going to try to get into the budget. Well, here in Springfield, there's several legislators and an organization that's working to bring about more money for Lincoln's New Salem. So again, if you go to thecentersquare.com, you'll find this story. You can watch along and look at the pictures. Illinois legislators tour embarrassing disrepair of historic Lincoln's New Salem. So we were able to take a tour yesterday, and I tell you what, it was something else. I remember going not too long ago, and we went during some nighttime hours, which is pretty cool because everything's candle lit, and you've got reenactors walking around and hot cider, and they're demonstrating various different types of blacksmith or how they worked with fabrics back in the day in Lincoln's time in the 1830s and beyond. But the disrepair that is happening at Lincoln's New Salem has people pretty upset that it's gotten to this point. I mean, for instance, there's a pedestrian walkway from Lincoln's New Salem downtown area to this mill, and it's disconnected from the concrete pad. You could see sunlight through that, and just the level of the level of disrepair has people on edge and thinking to themselves of the lack of focus on maintenance. You got to consider this is just one state historic site. This is a state historic site. This is not a site run by the federal government like Lincoln's home in downtown Springfield is. It's a very well kept. That whole area in downtown Springfield, where U.S. Senator Dick Durbin has an office as well. It's like catty corner from Lincoln's home. It's well maintained. It's upkept. It's well staffed. Lincoln's New Salem, though, as legislators said, was really falling apart, and the lack of focus and funding and manpower there has just diminished considerably. But there's also private groups out there that are working to raise awareness here. You've got New Salem Lincoln League Board President Gina Gilmore Walter. She joined State Senator Steve McClure and State Representative Wayne Rosenthal at Lincoln's New Salem with a ton of media there to explain what they gave a tour about.
Our first stop was the grist mill. We saw the drive shaft that was down in the weeds. It's been there since the flood of 2016. I believe the deterioration of the building at that time led to that happening. Otherwise, it probably would have survived that flood. In addition, it's blocked off. There's boards across the entrance ramp because, as you saw, the wooden ramp has holes in the floor. You wouldn't want anyone risking walking on that and possibly falling through. The overhead bridge, the walk bridge, it's been blocked off for several years now. They've taken the stairs out that did approach that walkover, that bridge, and they've replaced it with maybe a third of the stairs down the hillside. It's in very bad shape. It probably should have a debris net under it, honestly. There are boards missing that have fallen down on the highway below it. Some of the steel girders don't even touch the concrete pads that support it. They've shoved 2x4 shims in there, which are rotting and falling out. And then when we made our way up to the village, you saw the carding mill, the bale carding mill, where they would card the wool. The roof above that, a big section of that has caved in and due to rot, and it's not going to get better.
So again, a lot of demonstration yesterday in front of media where things were falling apart. And Gina said that she'd actually been out there Thursday, and there was a bunch of debris around one of the mills, like down on the ground and on some of the equipment inside the mill. And she said that was Thursday when they saw all that debris. It was almost like fresh debris that had come down. And then when we were there yesterday, we didn't see that debris. We actually saw some tire tracks leading to where she said, well, there was debris. So some people apparently are taking note that they're putting a spotlight on this. And they're looking for up to $19 million. $19 million. State Senator Steve McClure, he originally filed a bill to have $5 million for Lincoln's New Salem. But now he says that the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, which operates these Illinois State Historic Sites, says it's going to cost $19 million. He wasn't sure where they got that figure, but he says that he needs to also create a commission for Lincoln's New Salem so they can go line by line and take a look at what's the real cost going to be to maintain what is obviously falling apart. And you can see part of a barn that is literally just the overhangs are completely collapsed behind State Senator Steve McClure here.
We asked for $5 million initially. DNR says it's $19 million. I suspect that the truth is somewhere in between. But that's, again, it goes to the issue that we have when we're trying to figure out how much money to put in capital bills. We don't know the exact amount at this moment. And that's why the commission is so important. So
he wants to form a commission. He wants to ensure that they understand the full costs to taxpayers. And this is just one state historic site. There are state historic sites across the state that DNR maintains. And how are they looking? How do you balance these priorities, right? And it's not just the tax dollars going towards state historic sites for basic maintenance and upkeep and to address deferred maintenance, but you've also got, again, capital projects from legislators all over, grants towards organizations, money for infrastructure, whatever it may be. A lot of these projects are going to be people clawing for tax dollars. But McClure says that they need to address the disrepair at Lincoln's New Salem and anywhere else there's continued disrepair. And you got to think, $55 billion is what's being proposed here. How come they can't get $20 million for the state's historic sites?
Either spend less money now or spend much more money later. And by the way, if we wait till later, it's going to continue to embarrass our state when tourists come here from all over the world to see these sites.
Now, Lincoln's New Salem, again, has all kinds of field trips that people go to, and you can go to it during the day. Certain times of the year, they have nighttime events. It's pretty neat. You can see how people lived in the 1830s and 1840s. It's a state historic site, right? Lincoln's New Salem. But the disrepair there has people on edge that this is just another symptom of government spending out of control elsewhere, edging out and crowding out the necessary spending that's needed for basic upkeep. So all of this obviously is going to be worked into the equation to get to that final budgetary number of $54.3 billion or something. A lot of money involved, and we'll be watching closely to see how they put that all together. And of course, you can watch live with us each and every weekday morning here with Illinois in Focus Daily. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and get the podcast where you get podcasts, but also don't forget to get the headlines in your inbox at the Center Square, Illinois. All right, make it happen. Like I said, short show today. Got to get some stuff together and get to the Capitol, start my coverage day. And when they're in session, it's probably going to be like this. A little bit of a shorter show. Tomorrow, they're going to be in early because, well, they're coming down this afternoon. And then Thursday, they'll be in early as well. So there's going to be tons for us to unpack. Hopefully, I'll see you guys back here tomorrow with Illinois in Focus Daily. Get the podcast where you get podcasts, and seriously, sign up for that newsletter. Make sure you get that, and you'll stay plugged in with us. Follow me anywhere. Just search Bishop on Air, and you can find it anywhere on X, Facebook, Instagram. If you want to follow along live, probably the X page is the best place where we post articles as they come out. But we'll be talking about those and so much more here tomorrow morning with Illinois in Focus Daily. Have a great morning.